1, 2, 3.
Hello guys, welcome back to my lovely YouTube channel. I know only 50 people watch, but it's the 50 that matter. Today I want to talk about something a little bit more serious. It's something that I recently went through. It's a career search in your final year or your senior year at college/university, whatever you call it. So for the first half of the video, I kind of want to just vent and talk about my failures, my struggles, some learnings that I had. And then the last half, I really want to talk about some really critical advice that I personally have for you. Whether or not you take it, that's up to you. But yeah, I just really want to help other people because I feel like I needed this video around 6 months ago when I was having mental breakdowns every week. Hope you enjoy. So let's talk a little bit about my mental health during this period of time. To give a little bit of context, I didn't really think I would be in this situation, which is really naive of me, to be quite honest. Very confident, but naive. So if you knew me in my first year, you know that in my first year, I put in a lot of effort to make sure that every summer I had an internship, and that would put me in a good position to actually get a return offer in my third year summer. So when I was deciding between, I think it was 3 different offers for my summer internship for my third year, I was really thinking about who will give me a return offer. I know some people might prioritize different things like, you know, the variety of the job, the location of the job, the salary of the job. I have the privilege of kind of deciding about stability rather than how much I'm being paid, which I know is a huge privilege. So I'm really grateful for that from my dad. But when I made that decision, I really thought that I would get a return offer in my third year summer from that company. I didn't get a return offer mainly due to a hiring freeze, but also just because I just didn't get one. I didn't get selected. So that's the real truth. I was very disappointed. I felt very alone in that. But I noticed that it's not something I should take personally because there were really great people in the company that I still talk to. My mentor, Chantel. So I don't regret that decision. I do think it just made sense for everyone involved to not have provided me a return offer. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity. But when I first received that news and I found out, you know, other people got a return offer, I felt really insecure for a second. But at the end of the day, my passions just didn't align with that industry, and it kind of made sense for me to be pushed into my discomfort zone and basically have to job search during my final year. So I didn't think I would be in that position, but I'm glad I went through that entire terrible journey. I will admit, terrible, but so rewarding. A lot of character building during that period of time. Another thing I wanted to talk about that was pretty much life-changing for me is this experience that I had that wasn't a success. I'll admit it was not a success, but it wasn't, in my opinion, a failure. So I was interviewing for the rotational product management role at Facebook for their head office at Menlo Park, and I got to the final round. I didn't get the offer and I didn't succeed in that area, but during that process of actually preparing for the interview, I pretty much put in around 200 hours to mock practice, like for interviews, because it's really specific types of skills that you need to pass these interview rounds. During this time, it was really hard for me personally because first of all, you have to deal with imposter syndrome. I was mocking interviews with individuals who worked at Google, individuals who went to Wharton, people who had graduated and went on to sell companies, investment bankers from Goldman Sachs, and I didn't even graduate university yet. So I had to deal with that, but also dealing with going back to school. I'm currently the president of a club, and there was a lot of different events that we were hoping to hold, as well as sponsorship. So I was just dealing with a lot, and I know that a lot of other people are in the same situation, right? You went through all these interview rounds, and you get to the final round, you don't get chosen, but you put in around like 100 hours into interview prepping. And I know there's also other industries like consulting, where I know people have been prepping for years and maybe didn't get the position. So I would say the biggest learning out of that is to take a week of a mental health break, because I had like a million breakdowns over that, because it was a life-changing position. If I got that role, my life would be set, but I'm also fine without it. Like, I think it's a perfect role for a lot of individuals, but it's okay that I didn't get it. But I'm only coming to this terms with this like in the past few months. It was a lot to get over, and it was a huge barrier for me mentally. And I think that's the really big thing that a lot of people face during their job search journey, is that they get to the final round of this really intense company and then they don't get the position and then they stop trying. I would say that that's a huge thing to consider if you're in that position where, you know, you got an interview for a dream company of yours or a dream role and then you don't get it. Make sure that you keep trying, but also make sure that you're keeping yourself in check. So I took a mental health break for a week. I pretty much was like silent to everyone. And then I went back on my job search hunt. So what I actually use is I use that non-success, I guess I won't call it failure, but non-success. And I went to a lot of conferences, I talked to them about it, and I asked other people how they dealt with job rejections and like failing in interviews. And a lot of people face this, and a lot of people have been through a job interview round for their perfect job, dream job, and they didn't get it. And I think it's a really great way to actually build a conversation with someone and build a deeper relationship. And that worked out for me personally because I got to actually learn from a lot of product managers at Facebook who had actually applied like 7 different times and then finally got it, and that's why they're there. From the outside, you're looking like, oh, they got that. But you don't really know how much it took for that person to get there, right? The next thing I want to talk about is how hard it is. So on an average year, job searching during your graduate year is always hard, right? There's only a specific amount of grad roles, new grad roles. There's a specific amount of new grad programs that exist that specifically hire new grads. But there's also those entry level, like 1 to 3 years of job experience that they're looking for, and you might be eligible for it. Well, I feel like it's a lot harder now because there's MBA students who are out of job and they're going for these entry-level roles now. So you're not only just competing with new grads of undergrad, you're competing with new grads of master's students, which, you know, it's a bit different. You have a complete additional degree on top of that. But also on top of that, I think it's a lot harder because a lot of people lost their jobs. So now they're going maybe to lower level jobs so that they can just have something, stability, some job security at that point, because they're really looking for a job, and I completely understand that. But as new grads, you just feel like the entire world is against you, quite literally, right? Like, first of all, there's a pandemic, so you can't even go outside to have coffee chats with people. Secondly, you're dealing with school, and school is a huge change because there's a lot of, you know, online classes. You're keeping track of all these different types of tasks now because we're in a virtual environment. And then on top of that, you might want to explore grad school, so you still have to do really well in school. And then on top of that, again, you're competing against master students, those who lost their jobs, the international market, because everyone is now applying to every single country. So you're dealing with a lot in a pandemic, I will admit. And lastly, obviously, one of the hardest parts is dealing with watching everyone succeed. I think the hardest part of all of this is to keep trying while watching everyone around you get their dream jobs, get such high paying jobs, get job stability, get job security, moving countries. And whenever I logged onto LinkedIn, I felt like a heavy weight of depression. I felt like I was just not good enough. I felt like, you know, what am I doing so wrong? I felt like the efforts that I put in since my first year were going to waste. I felt like there must be something wrong with my interviews, like I must be a terrible candidate. And I think you start overthinking and doubting yourself a lot just because someone else is succeeding. But I think a lot of the times we need to not discredit their hard work, because I may think that I worked really hard, but this other person might have worked 50 times harder than me. I might have been, you know, hanging out and chilling, and they might have been on 50 different coffee chats. And I think that's a terrible way to look at it from my perspective. I don't think you should discredit someone else just because they're succeeding and you maybe aren't in your perspective. So I think that's something to consider, and it's something to keep in mind, because I think to have that toxic energy, I believe strongly in karma, and that's gonna come back real quick for you. So that's my personal opinion, my personal thoughts, but it was really, really hard dealing with the fact that other people were getting 50 offers and I couldn't even get one. So that's what it felt like, and you have to deal with that because you have to log on to LinkedIn, you still have to apply to jobs, and you're dealing with all your friends updating everything, being like, I'm an incoming blah, blah, at blah, blah company, and it's just like very demotivating at times. But I think the best way to approach it, I did at least, is asking people like, how was your interview process? Like, congrats, obviously, and trying to learn from their success rather than, you know, trying to doubt them in order to make myself feel better, because I'm not sure like what that helps. So I think that's a really great way to approach it. Very hard, much easier said than done, I will admit, but there's a lot to learn from those people who were like getting 5 different offers at the start of the year. So that's something to consider. So now that we're kind of done with the venting session of my life, my failures, you know, my insecurities, I kind of want to give a few pointers on what I feel like worked out for me, because I did end up landing a job offer at an incredible company, a company that I have constantly looked up to, but I never thought I could get into, an entirely new different field that I never even considered because it wasn't really taught in university. The first tip I have is decide on your non-negotiables. So what are non-negotiables, you might be thinking? Non-negotiables is something that I heard from a DoorDash employee who is just one of the nicest people I've ever met. She's an incredible woman. But either way, so non-negotiables for me personally are a few different things that I look for in companies and I need in companies in order to accept an offer or in order to accept an interview. The first thing is I care about how much I get paid. There is no shame in that. I care about how much I get paid and I better be equal to men. Period! But also in terms of a contract, am I a contract employee or am I like a full-time employee? Like what is the situation there? From my perspective, I really care about insurance. So I really accept contract work because that's a non-negotiable for me. The second non-negotiable for me was actually the values of the company. So to me personally, I really care about gender equity. I really care about LGBTQ rights. I really care about poverty alleviation. So those are the three things that I really care about. And hopefully the company is doing something in that area. So the company that I'm working for, they donate to a lot of different charities, which I personally think donating money is a really great way to get involved because money helps the world go around. But also they do advocate for a lot of women inside internally and have a lot of mentorship programs to allow for advancements. The third non-negotiable for me was the people of the company, whether they seem like really kind individuals who really want to help you grow or whether they care more about their personal performance over your well-being or your growth and development. And as a new grad, something that I find really important for me is to make sure that I'm ending up in a company where there's opportunity in the future, but opportunity to learn from people rather than people maybe gatekeeping information. And I do think a lot of companies do have a pretty good culture, so this is kind of like a very easy non-negotiable, but that's something that I was really careful about and I really wanted to keep top of mind. So non-negotiables really helped me kind of wind down what interviews I wanted to take and also what companies I wanted to apply for. And I do agree you shouldn't be too picky with where you apply for, but non-negotiables are really important to me and there's no point of accepting a job or an interview at a company that you don't see a future for yourself in. So the second thing for me was actually writing down a list of titles that you feel like you could actually apply for and just considering them, keeping them top of mind, and then adding alerts on all the websites. So what I did was analyst, associate, coordinator, specialist, and then adding marketing, strategy, sales, which is very new to me, loyalty, brand, and advertising. Those were the main titles that I really cared about because those are the areas that I'm hoping to get into, or at that point I was, not anymore, things have changed, but those really helped me out in kind of the entry-level areas. The third thing I considered is what countries can I work in. So this is a really important part. It really widens your options in my opinion. So I did apply to a lot of reach opportunities in New York because that is my goal in life, but I'm not in a rush for it. I also applied to Singaporean locations because I'm a Singaporean citizen, some Korean ones because my mom is Korean, and so technically I could get a visa very easily, and Canadian ones because I'm a current student here and I would be able to extend my visa very easily. The fourth one, to be quite honest, which I think is one of the most important ones, is trying to figure out what you want and what industry you want. So for me, I decided that tech is an area I'm going to break into. I manifested that for me. I was like, I'm going to get into tech regardless of what I have to do, what position I have to take, I'm going to get into tech. I ended up getting into tech. I am extremely excited about that. And I got in with a position I really wanted. So that was incredible, but I don't think I would have been able to do that if I wasn't keeping such high awareness of the industry itself and what types of positions they are and what is the kind of like lingo that they use with positions for entry level, right? Because every different industry has a different type of kind of title for entry level. So that's something I considered, and that really helped me because not only in that, I was able to find a lot of people to network with in that industry and kind of tell them like, I really want to break in, like I just don't know how. And also trying to find people who broke in from like banking, which is my previous background, into tech, and how you can market your transferable skills. That was really important to me and trying to learn about that. The fifth one is keeping track of deadlines. So I did miss a lot of deadlines, and I wish if I could go back, I wish I could kind of keep track of everything. At that point, to be quite honest, that was just not a realistic option for me because my mind was scattered everywhere. So that was not an option for me, but that is something I would change and I would have done just so that I wouldn't have missed any opportunities. That might have been good for me. So the sixth one, switching out bullet points in your resume. So I noticed that a lot of the times I had a lot of different resume versions and it was just getting very complicated. So I had one resume that I kept and it was my most popular one, the one that I felt like most confident in. But then there were certain jobs where that was more focused on teamwork and strategy rather than maybe numbers. And so I switched out my analytics ones for my strategy and whatever. And I felt like that was the easiest way to go about it in my personal opinion and most efficient. So the last one, which I feel like is the most important part and actually, you know, getting that actual offer, is doing well in your interview. So in terms of how I approached it, I researched the company for like hours trying to learn about their culture, what type of people they like, looking at other people's LinkedIn, looking at people who've previously been in that role and what that looks like, and then going on coffee chats with people who work in that company to learn about what culture they really are, because you know what they display on the outside might not be what's on the inside. And then you also need to prepare all your answers. I pretty much know the tell me about yourself, like front to back, why the company, why the role, what is the role, because I have been asked in my interview, what is this role? And they want you to give like a full rundown of what the role is, which I think is actually a great way of knowing whether or not people are interested in the role, because in the roles that I was very interested in, I was able to talk about it for a lot. And then also answering like, what do you want out of this role, in the sense of why does this role align with your future plans? And I think that's a really important part, because you don't want to be, you have to really balance, you know, being really ambitious and being like, I really love the career advancement opportunities, but also being like, I love the culture, I love the people, and I know that it's a place for me to grow. So I think there's a lot of balance that you need to do with that. But the interview prep part is one of the most important. And I think my biggest tip with that is, I got it from one of the most incredible mentors as well that I have. He works in New York, and he's an incredible person. And he said, approach the interview like you just want to be their friend. You just want to be liked. So you have to be very honest, very vulnerable, but obviously keep it professional, because, you know, it is an interview at the end of the day. But I think it's a really great way to approach it. And it kind of lifted a lot of anxiety off of me when I thought about that. And the last takeaway I have for you, which one of my mentors gave me, she's my main mentor. I'm really blessed to have many mentors. But the one piece of advice that I will never forget is every failure is data collection.
Period!
It's just more data for you to collect, to understand and learn about yourself. And I think it's a great way to approach it. Very non-emotional way, which I personally think is the best for me, because I get very overthinky, but that's something that really helped me, and hopefully this can help you.